I am here. I am here. Wow. It has been an awesome week. Hectic among some other stuff, but it's a joy to be here as always. And truth be told, because it has been such an hectic week for me and a bit emotional of a week too, I must say that being here this evening gives me joy and lifts my spirit as well. Needless to say, or added to that, it gives me hope, it lifts my spirit because, it goes to show that no matter what, we have to press, we have to push, and we have to stay committed to the task and to that which we are called to do. And to be honest with you, today I almost didn't come on because of the kind of a week I had and stuff like that. But I pressed and I pushed and remembered that I have a mission to get to, or a mission to complete today, and that is why I am here and happy to be here, might I add. Just as though I encourage others, being here, seeing you all, it encourages me just the same. And with that said, I wanted to have an interview today with my older daughter, but she is not feeling so well, and so I am here as a single or a solo kind of a thing. I was really hoping and looking forward to having her on with me this evening because I think it would have made the podcast so much more engaging, so much more fun, so much more interesting, but I hope that we'll be able to do a part 2 soon. And but I'm doing it today alone. Nonetheless, I just want to make this statement that my podcast, as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, that my podcasts are not necessarily for everyone. My podcasts, they're not prescriptive. However, I believe with the stories shared and the wisdom that there's something for an individual, if it's even just one individual, can take from it, learn from it, add to their life, and to improve themselves and making themselves better. Because the mission of the podcast, the Woman of Worth podcast, is to care and share and to shoulder without judging is the tagline. And it is so powerful. It's such a powerful tagline, and so that's the reason why I am here and hoping that you, that individual, that woman of worth, will pull and add to your life. With that said, this podcast today, it is gonna be filled with a number of things. And with saying a number of things, what I mean is, because we're still in the month of May, which is Child's Month, and yesterday was Child's Day, I think. Hope I got that right. And so we're always celebrating our children, but I want to take this opportunity today to say Happy Child's Month and Happy Child's Day to all you out there who are children, and to the parents who are watching. Know that your children are blessed and that they are gifts from God. And with that said, also it's mental health awareness month, And because we're still in this month, though, I mean, we should always be concerned about our mental health each and every day, each and every month, each and every year. But because it is a specific or a chosen time period in which we are focused so much on that, I want to also say that what I'll be sharing today will include some of that as well. And excuse me. Also, with that said, I want to title this podcast as Bridging the Gap Between Parents, Guardians, and Children. Yes, bridging the gap between parents, guardians, and children. That's quite a powerful topic or title, and I want to share on it today because of the wisdom I've gained, the understanding, and also how it has helped me in understanding the gap that is there between parents and guardians. For myself personally, how it helped me to bridge the gaps that were there with my older daughter, and how it has caused our relationship to be even greater, more loving, more kind, more responsive, more everything that is great. And a lot of people see us and they admire us. They admire our relationship as mother and daughter. Yes, and there are persons who from time to time will encourage us and give us words of encouragement to say, especially myself, to say, Aura, you have done a great job, for those who would have known our story especially. But for those who don't know our story, it is it is something that I want to share on today, to say that in life, while it is good that others admire us, while it is good when others admire our tenacity or strength or courage or boldness or greatness or excellence and that kind of a thing, I think it is so important to also share the challenges, the struggles, the hardships, the hurdles, the different things that we struggled with or settled for, to let individuals understand that in order for us to have gotten to the place of courage, strength, boldness, greatness, and that kind of a thing, we did not get there by chance, neither did it happen, just by, the snap of a finger. It took work, it took intentionality, it took being deliberate, it took being just being determined and persevere. It took all of that, for us to be able to build the relationship that we have today. And it was not easy, I must say, but it was all worth it, the work we had to put in. And mind you, we always need to keep working at our relationships with our children. Yes, it never ends. Even when children become adults, they're almost like children still to the parents, because they are the children or the child regardless of age and the stage they are in life. And I am happy and proud to say that my daughter still every now and again comes to me for a word of advice or a suggestion, and she values the responses that I will give her. Mind you, she's a very strong individual and someone who has also wanted her independence, and I had to learn to give her that. It was hard, but I had to learn to do that, because when we do that with our children, we learn to know when to let go and to give them that space to grow, to develop themselves, and to tap into the more of who they are. When we do that, they'll be stronger individuals. And it also means that when we do that too, we leave room for them to be able to come to us, to know that they can still trust us, to come to us, even if when they try to become independent of themselves and to do things on their own, that we are still there to love them, guide them, and support them. Yes, and in saying all of that, as I made mention that there are individuals who admire us and stuff like that, there are family members too who admire the relationships that we have. And at a point, I thought that, because of the struggles and the challenges we've had, that, how could they see our relationship and, think that we have a good relationship and that kind of a stuff. But the truth is, we were working at the things that needed to be worked on. Yes? And I can remember a youngster in my family a few years ago. If maybe not two of them, two nephews. Once I remember they said, we have the best relationship or something like that, and I had to be frank with them right there and then to say that what you see now or what you're seeing before you is a lot of hard work that we had to put in. And I had to also be frank with them and let them know that we don't have it all together. We are not perfect, or I am not perfect. And to let them know that why they're seeing the relationship that they admire is also because I learned to come down to my daughter's level, as well as pray as always. I don't think I can do anything as much, or I do anything as much as I do pray. And it's a good tool for me because it has helped me in many ways along my life's journey. And also, when I shared with them that we too have struggled, but what it took for us to get at the level that we were at the time, is because of the work that we had to put in. And I remember there was another instance within the family, and it was thought that I too would be better to just dissolve things and that kind of a thing. But I was a little bit again timid and drawn back and that kind of a thing. But then when I looked at it, I came to realize that we do have something going on for our relationship as a mother and daughter, but we did not get there overnight. It took a lot of work. And I mean, some parents may be saying a lot of work. Why or how can it take a lot of work if they are the child or the children and we are the adults? They are human beings too. They have feelings too. They have concerns. They have issues that they're facing that they have to deal with as children. Bear in mind, as they go through the different stages and phases of their lives, they have hormones to deal with. They have body changes to deal with. They have all these different things that they have to go through during their puberty stage. And this in itself can have it can stress them a little bit, because they may not understand or know how to deal with the changes in their bodies and that kind of stuff. And especially if we, the parents, have not guided them or spoken with them and share with them that this is a part of what they will go through as they grow older, as they mature and stuff like that. And some parents may be watching and may be saying, as a parent also, why do I need to work at this, my relationship with my children, when their parent probably did not necessarily put that or invest that much time and interest in their relationship growing up? But it is so important for us to understand why it is necessary for us to continue to work on the relationship with our children. Just as with our spouses, we work on the relationship with our spouses because we want the relationships to work, right? We want all the time and the energy and the resources that we've invested to to yield great results, to yield interest, and that kind of a stuff, or profits. In the very same way, we should be concerned about the relationships with our children, right? And one of the things that I learned at a later stage in our relationship was that I contributed to parent hurt. Yes, I did say that. I confess to that. And I am not ashamed to say that, I am guilty, or I was guilty of that, right? And it is something that I had at some point when I realized. I had the conversation with my daughter when God made me to understand that I contributed to some of the things that were affecting my child, my older daughter. I had to do what was necessary. But before talking about some of the contributory factors that we as parents sometimes contribute to our child, which in turn affects them mentally, and then we see it spill out or spill over in their attitudes, in their behavior, in their mannerism, and then we tend to want to, abuse them physically or verbally, and that kind of a thing, and chastise them aggressively. And if you had watched the stream last week with Dr. Coretta Brown Johnson and myself, the interview, where these were some of the things that we spoke about that as parents we need to have conversations with our children, and that even though sometimes as parents we're stuck in our world, they too have a world, and the different things that they have to face in their world, and how important it is for us to have conversations with them, how important it is for us to interact and engage with them from the beginning of the day, and how important it is also for us to, embrace them, with a hug and say, I love you, and that kind of a thing. And, when our children are affected mentally, it can also affect their education. And sometimes as parents, we may not look into these things. We may be just wanting the good report, the good results, but we have not stopped to take account of what could be the possible reasons why we are not getting the results that we want from our children, whether that be results literally, in their schoolwork, or results in, their behavior and their attitudes. We have not stopped to take an account to, ask ourselves the vital questions. And when we contribute to some of the things that affects our children in a young stage, they grow with these things, and later as they become young adults, it spills over, or it can spill over into other areas of their lives, and that can be very dangerous. And so I want to share on some of the parent hurt, some of the things that we contribute to as parents. Now, as I made mention earlier, the stream is not for everyone. Yes, and what I share, not everyone can relate or have experience, or maybe still experiencing some of the things that I will be sharing. But it is for those individuals. Some persons may be watching and may be thinking, how is it that we don't understand these things? How is it that we didn't know how to, deal with our children in a particular way as parents? But what individuals sometimes may not understand, that their experience is different from other individuals' experience, and that makes a whole lot of a difference. And also too, some have been exposed to a different kind of a culture, or a different kind of a nature in the environment in which they were raised. So it separates us in a sense. And so, this podcast is really, this podcast today in particular is really for individuals who may be struggling with some of the things that I struggled with raising my child, at years ago when I was a much younger person. And again, I had my older daughter pretty young as a teenager. And so some of the things I did not really understand how to relate to her. And that also is because of lack of knowledge or ignorance, which is the same thing, and that kind of a stuff, right? And may I say though that with some of the things that we contribute to our children as parents, that I want to call parent hurt, is sometimes we hold our children hostage after breaking up with the other spouse or the other parent. And that is a huge no. A huge no. We do that, and we don't recognize that when we do that, we're not really harming the other parent. It is the child at the end of the day who suffers. It is the child at the end of the day who feels the hurt and the pain. It is the child at the end of the day who has to deal with all of the different things in their emotion, the different thoughts that's going on in their minds. And so we have to be careful or mindful of that kind of a thing that we do to our children. It's not fair to them. They are not deserving of that, and they are worthy of all our love and care. One of the other things that I would love to call parent hurt is that we put fear of our past at the expense of our children's future. Now, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that is because of our experiences sometimes when we were younger, and we may have experienced some real terrible things, some bad things, some things that were not, fair to us. Sometimes we use our experiences of our past to drive fear in our children. So therefore, because they are now young adults, we would want to use the fear of our past to use it to guide them, but that's not a proper guide. That's an error. That's a great error. And the children nowadays, they're so different from us when we were growing up. They're smart. It would want to seem like they're smart, and yes, they are smarter. They are so smart, and because they have so much access to so many information, we have to be mindful of how we or the things we want to say to them, or how we want to use it to manipulate them even. And one of the other things about putting the fear of our past at the expense of our children's future is that because of what we experience in our past lives, we are so fearful that they may experience the same thing, or they may not necessarily walk into all the things they desire or hope or dream to have in whatever area of their lives. And that is an error, because when we do that kind of a thing, we are limiting them to experience the abundance, where what we're doing is we're limiting them from getting to know more about themselves, to branch out, to step out, to explore, and explore not in a negative way in all different kind of things, but explore in the sense of being more adventurous, explore more in the sense of learning new things, getting to understand the different varieties of things that they are interested in, and that kind of a thing. And when we put our fear of our past at the expense of the future of our children, what we're also doing is saying to them that they are not capable of making good decisions, of making better decisions than we did in our past. And that's another huge error. So we have to be so careful in or about the things that we do or how we contribute negatively to our children and cause parent hurt. And one of the other things about parent hurt is that as I made mention, it makes our children lack trust. So they may not trust us as a parent. And that happens sometimes. And then sometimes when these things start happening, we may wonder, why is it or how is it that they are our child, we are their parents? Why is it that they don't trust us? How is it that they don't share some of the things that they are experiencing? How is it that they share with their friends? How is it that they share with another adult? How is it that they share with somebody else who is not us? And also, it's so important again to have our children trust us as parents, to feel comfortable, which that was also mentioned in the interview last week with Dr. Coretta Brown Johnson. That is so important for our children to be able to trust us, to be able to come and to have conversations with us. But we have to create the safe spaces for them to feel comfortable to do so, right? And one of the other contributory factors to parent hurt is that our children may become bitter and resentful, etc. You understand? And as parents, sometimes because of our pride and our ego, we allow that to override everything else that our children suffer at our hands. And what do I mean by that is, as I made mention earlier, that there was a time I had to come down to my daughter's level. And during that period of time, I was so busy working, I believe at the time, 7 days a week. So I would work for my boss, but then I would do my own thing on my days off. So, and that was to make ends meet. So yes, that was challenging too, but I had to do what I had to do in order to be able to provide for her. But also, I was missing out on quality time. I was missing out on sitting in with her to get to know how her day was, how is she doing, how she is overall in every area. And I missed out on that for a while. And I remember, because of what was happening in the environment that we were, I had become so frustrated with everything that, I remember getting so upset at her one evening, and I was just, expressing my frustration at her, which was not fair, and just saying that kind of a thing. And I remember she blurted out that evening, and said to me, "I'm sick and tired of this too." And for a minute I was like, but wait, how she had that too? But wait, she passed her place. But wait. And I nipped it in the body, yes, for her to remember who she's talking to. But something was tugging on the inside of me to pay attention, because there is a message that's coming out of what she's saying or how she is behaving. So what I'm trying to say is, we're not given an excuse for the behavior of our children. But when we start seeing them having certain behaviors and attitudes, there is a message that we ought to be, open to learn, to see, and to try to understand, because they are trying to relate a message through their attitudes. And it could have been that the message was being expressed before it got to that place where the attitude and the behaviors were not appropriate. However, we missed it. I missed it at the time. We miss it a lot as parents, but there's a message, right? And I had to come down to her level, and after saying, but wait, and put her in her place. But it's like there was something pulling on the inside of me to say, you need to listen. There's something going on with her, why she is behaving the way she is. And I did listen, and that kind of a thing. And I remember another evening, there was a picture of her when she was much younger. Could have been maybe about 5 years old, or little less than 5, or something like that. And I remember she found the picture and she pointed at it and said to me, Mommy, this is what I want, just us. Because I was so busy with everything else and everyone else and that kind of a thing. And I took note. And I said to myself, okay, it felt hard, but I made the sacrifice and, took the time and started doing just us, where we would just go to Devon House, and we would go every now and again to the beach. As the years goes by, we would go to the beach together. We would go to like little what would I say, little places that was fun, relaxing and stuff like that. And we had fun, and things had taken a turn for the better, which I was so grateful for. And so this is why it's so important for us to really, pay attention to our children. And I had to put pride aside, or my ego. I recognize that if I don't put it aside, my child is going to pay a greater price, or I'm going to pay a greater price down the road somewhere, which I didn't want that. So I had to, make the sacrifice and to come down to her level. Growing up, I would often hear my mommy quote a scripture or say to us, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your mother and your father. And it is taken from Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 to 4. And I'm going to read the Amplified version. And the first 3 verses, as parents, we have a tendency to remember the first 3 verses and forget the fourth of verses 1 to 4. Now 1 to 3 reads, children, obey your parents in the Lord. That is, accept their guidance and discipline as his representatives. For this is right, for obedience teaches wisdom and self-discipline. Honor, esteem, value as precious your father and your mother, and be respectful to them. This is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may be well with you and that you may have a long life on the earth. Now that is a beautiful set of verses. But what verse 4 says is, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Do not exasperate them to the point of resentment with demands that are trivial or unreasonable or humiliating or abusive, nor by showing favoritism or indifference to any of them, but bring them up tenderly with loving kindness in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Now, if that is not even more powerful, I don't know what is. And as parents, we are so guilty of these things, because we would, for some of us who may have been raised or grown up in the church and stuff like that, or our parents, would always quote those scriptures. We are so used to hearing them. And sometimes as we become adults or parents ourselves, we may start quoting the very same scripture to our children and miss or leave off verse 4. And as parents, we do provoke our children to wrath, or to anger rather. We do ask some trivial stuff of our kids sometimes. Sometimes we expect them to do certain things that we know we're putting pressure on them to do. And what I mean by this is, sometimes, and as it says, let there be no favoritism. So if you have more than one child, don't let there be any favoritism or any indifference at all. And we have a tendency to do these things as parents and create a great mess in our own homes, in our own families. So we have to be so careful about those things. And what I mean by that to say is favoritism, or treat some better than the other, and to give some, pressure some and have some expectation of one and not everyone, and that kind of stuff is, if there are house chores to do, sure they are to do their house chores. Sure it is important. Sure it is necessary for them to do these things. But sometimes if there's more than one, and sometimes it may not necessarily be, all the children in the house may not necessarily be our children or your child. It could also be nephews and nieces or cousins and that kind of a thing. And sometimes the pressure may be placed on just one child. We expect them to do so much and no more, and forgetting that they too are human beings. They too can become frustrated. They too can break under the pressure. The expectations that we have of them that are just not realistic. And then they have to deal with, the parent may not having much time for them. They have to deal with peer pressure at school and that kind of a thing. So we have to be so careful and so mindful. And I would love for you, my woman of worth community, to keep in mind these verses, and to also keep more so in mind verses 4, because it's so potent and so rich with wisdom, instruction and guidance, even for us as parents too. Because just as how we expect our children to learn, to grow, to take heed to instructions, corrections, and to apply wisdom to their days, in the very same way as parents, there's no such thing as there's no room. There's always room to grow. There's always room to be better. There's always room to improve. There's always room for us to learn and to develop and that kind of a thing, and be better parents. Because the parent I was when I had her at the age of 16, 17, the parent I became when I was 20, the parent I later became at the age of, say, 30, 35, and even now being a new mom, being a mom all over again, is a completely different dimension. It's a completely different stage and level that I am at, because there's so much that I have learned. And sometimes too, some of the things that we go through, it happens for a reason. It happens sometimes so that we can learn from the experiences, but that is only if we can see the good or learn or get the good from them, and not just see the bad as just all bad overall, right? And as those verses I read, talks about, how our children should respond to us as parents, but also how we as parents should respond to our children. I want to add right here that when we understand as parents that we contribute to some of the hurt that they're experiencing, some of the things that they're going through mentally, when we can understand, when we can acknowledge it and get to the place, coming down to their level too, in apologizing, that's a very powerful word right there, a very powerful tool. An apology is so powerful, it can break yokes and destroy the plans of the enemy. You may ask, what proof do I have of that? What do I mean by that? What do I mean by that is, in Matthew chapter 5 verses 23 to 26, it spoke about leaving the gift at the altar and going to reconcile with your brethren or your brother, and to make amends, lest the brethren will take you to court and you will go to prison and have to spend every dollar to pay for whatever it is that you were taken there for. You may say, okay, it makes mention of a brethren, a brother. We are talking about children now. The principle can be applied in the very same way. If we learn to make amends with our children, if we learn to apologize to our children where and when it is necessary, when we need to and when we should do so, we are helping them to heal. That's where the apology takes them to healing. I can speak boldly on this or state that this is a fact because after the Lord made me to understand that I contributed to some of the things that my daughter was hurting from, or some of the things that she experienced, or some of the things that the decision later that she was about to make in not trusting people, in not, these little things. It's because of some of the things that I did. Indirectly, I didn't think I was doing those things. I didn't think I was contributing to all those things with her growing up. I was just thinking I'm being a mother, I'm being a parent, and as a single mom, I'm just doing what I need to do to discipline her, to raise her, and that kind of a thing. But what was missing is that I was not understanding certain things. And so later, when the Lord made me to understand these things, an apology was one of the things I had to be quickened to do. And the healing process started, shortly after she left for school on a program overseas. And I remember when I was to go up for her graduation, the Lord had us having a conversation on the phone one evening. And in having a conversation out of nowhere, the revelation came to me that I contributed to some of the hurt she was experiencing. I was a part of the parent hurt. I was saying or was thinking it was just her dad. But I was a part of it too. I was guilty. And so right then, I apologized to her on the phone. As a matter of fact, we were both there crying. We were both there sharing and talking. And I was just confessing right there. The Lord had me to confess and to admit and to recognize that I was a part of the hurt. And there was something I needed to do. I needed to make an apology so this child could experience healing, so she could walk into healing, and so she could live her life free. What do I mean by living her life free? Like I made mention earlier, we hold our children hostage because of after breaking up with the other parent. So they have to be trying to do as mommy say, do as daddy say, but in the same breath, they're struggling too because they're trying to figure out, why do they have to be doing certain things when mommy or daddy has inflicted wounds upon them, where mommy and daddy is not even acknowledging where they went wrong as parents too, where they have inflicted wounds. They're not even trying to clean the wounds. So sometimes we have to be so careful with these things. And upon that apology, I remember when I eventually went to Canada and we saw each other and that kind of a thing, there was an outburst of a huge disagreement with her dad and myself right there in the open, in the public, and that kind of a stuff. And long story short is that God continued the healing. God continued to show to me that there was something that I needed to do. Remember I said that before I went to Canada, that the Lord had us have a conversation on the phone that the healing process had started for my daughter. And so he was already doing a new thing in our relationship. He was already doing a new thing in her life. He was already doing a new thing for her. And it was a process. So bear in mind, I'm not saying that it's easy. To do the right thing is never easy. It's so much easier for us to do the hard things, to do the easy things, but it's so easy. It's so hard to do the right things. And so because it was a process and God had already started it, he was watching over us to ensure that he would have also performed his end of the bargain. But I, as a mother, had to do my part. And so while I was there and there was this outburst with her dad and myself in the open public and everything, the Lord made me to understand the more then that there is something that I have to finish. I have to finish by continuing the apology and also to share something about my personal experience that she never knew of at all. That had nothing to do with her really. I had to share on the spot right then and there. It was a hard pill for me to swallow to share that, because what I was sharing with her was so personal. And I did not know how, as my daughter, how she would look at me, if she would have judged me, if she would have condemned me, or what the case would have been. I was not sure, but right there and then I almost wasn't even thinking, or didn't even really care if she would have thought of me in that way. I was more concerned about doing or completing what God had required of me to do. And so right there outside, it was just the two of us embracing each other out in the cold. Well, it was cold for me because I'm not used to the climate. It wasn't that cold for them, but for me, it was extremely cold. And with just a spaghetti strap dress on, no sleeves, I went outside. I hugged my child. I embraced her with such an embrace that I don't even know how long we embraced each other for. So long I can't even tell you how long we were embracing each other for. But I embraced her. I apologized again. I apologized for everything I was aware of, everything I was not aware of, everything that I said and did. I apologized to her, for, if I have even given her the impression as though I'm thinking of her in any form of a way, because it was, and again, as I made mention, I was just using my past experience not judge. I was using my past experience, or my past experience fears to at the expense of her future, as I made mention earlier, that sometimes as parents, this is what we do. We use our fears of our past to hold their future as hostage too. And right there and then I had to apologize for that. And she made a statement and say, if I had thought of her in that way. And the truth is, I didn't really think of her in that way, like she would have made the same mistake as I did. But in the same breath, I wasn't 100% sure she was confident in herself enough and, what should I say, strong enough to make the right decisions when it comes to certain things. And so I had to apologize all through on the hurt I caused her as a parent. Now, with saying all of that, we have to learn as parents to learn to pay attention to the signs, as there are always signs. There's always a signal before things get out of hand. There is always something that's indicating to us that our children may be experiencing some form of a parent hurt, may be experiencing some kind of a mental challenges because of the things that we as parents may do or say to them. And so we have to learn as parents to pay attention to those things. But also, as parents, it is imperative for us to put pride and ego aside, come down to our children's level, see them as human beings, apologize for what we have done or said to them wrongfully, and to also do right by them. We are the first individuals or the first model that they are looking to model after. So we have to set examples as parents or as adults. We love to talk about the children. Do as I say, but don't do as I do. Foolishness. Those are gone in the foolish days. We talk about do as I say, don't do it. They're actually doing what we're doing. So if we're not taking the bold step to put our pride and our ego aside and to make an apology, what we're teaching them is as they grow older and they have erred individuals, they don't necessarily need to apologize to them. Because as simple as things may seem, we may think that these things are minute, but they can in turn be massive things, because everything that we experience as young people as we go along in life, they contribute or can affect or impact our lives as adults, which in turn will impact or affect society and the wider community, right? So I want to close today and just say to you, leave a few questions with you, my Woman of Worth community mothers and the fathers who may just stumble upon this podcast, but more so my mothers, because I'm a mother because of the experience I also had, or the errors that I made in my past with my older daughter. I want to ask you these questions. I would love for you to ask yourselves these questions. How well do you know your child? How often do you tell them that you love them? How often do you embrace them with a warm hug? How often do you sit and make the time, the quality time, to listen to them, to hear their silly stories, if you may call it that, to hear of the wondrous excitement and adventures that they want to share with you? Have you apologized to your child yet? If you have not yet done so, I implore you to make it right with your child or your children. And if it's your nieces and your nephews that you're caring for, remember to also apologize to them where you have erred as parents, as mothers. And also, I would love to say to you that our children, they are human beings. They have feelings. They have a heart. They have emotions. They have different things that they struggle with. We as individuals too sometimes struggle with different things. As parents, sometimes we struggle and we may think we're not doing things the right way or the proper way, because as we know, there's no guide that can really say this is a guidebook to instruct us as parents. There's none that can really do that for us, because every parent, every child, every situation, every culture, whether it be literal in a nation or culture in the home and environment, everything is so different. The nature of the home, the nature of the families, everything is so different. So it will require, different ways or strategies in how we do things. But needless to say, we as parents need to pay close attention to the signs. Again, I'm repeating this so much because I myself have missed signs in the past. And a sign too that I had shared on last week's podcast interview with Dr. Coretta Brown Johnson, where because of not paying attention to the signs and how, the things of the parent hurt was affecting my child, that, the different things, the different frustration and all these things, it was impacting her in such a way that, she felt like she was not being heard, she was not seen. She felt like, what she had to say was not so important because I just could not find the time. I just did not find the time for her, in the earlier days. And so she thought of harming herself. Now, another thing I want to close out with as parents is to say to you, if your child says to you, I'm going to kill myself, I feel like I want to die, and these kind of things, these are signs that you should not ignore. Do not believe or think that your child or children are bluffing. They are not. They need help, but they most need your love, care, and attention. While it's good for us to be able to provide for our children, to give them all that which they need or want, it's most important to show them love, to make them feel valued, to make them feel cared for. And so I just want to encourage you, my Woman of Worth community, my Woman of Worth mothers. Remember, as parents, we don't always get it right. We don't always do right by ourselves. We don't always do right by our children. We make mistakes sometimes. Sometimes we may think we may have made the best decisions, and sometimes they may not necessarily be the best. However, it is not to say that you are the worst parent, that you are the worst mom, that even if you have operated in error, whether intentionally or not, it does not mean that all is lost. It does not mean that you're a terrible parent. What would make you a terrible parent, I believe, is when you totally, after ignoring the signs or just did not pay attention to them or did not understand that some of the things are just signs to pay attention to, but then when the time comes for you to acknowledge, where you have gone wrong, to acknowledge that, we need help, to acknowledge that we need to do better, to acknowledge that we can improve things. This is when I would say that you will become a terrible parent or a terrible mom if you have not taken the time or the interest, or just do what is necessary to make things better. That's what would have made you a terrible mom, and then you would have lost them all together. And there's no turning back when things get out of hand. And it could be that they take their own lives. It could be that they may have to end up in state homes. And no parent would really love to have their children in state homes, but sometimes these things happens, unfortunately, for different reasons. And I'm not judging any mother if that is or has become the end result for her relationship with her child or children. But I'm here to say and to encourage you to get help where help is needed, and to be gentle with yourselves, to just learn to take it one step at a time. And when you would have recognized that there is an opportunity for you to do right by you, right by your children, and to just be a better parent, to be a better mom, take the opportunity to do so. In the later days of your life, you will be happy that you made the investment, or you took the interest in doing and making things better. And also later on, your children will come around to say thank you. Thank you, mom. Thank you, dad, for acknowledging. I can testify to that today, because in our later days of building our relationship stronger and better, my daughter can look to me today, even to date, and say, Mommy, I thank you. I thank you for apologizing. I thank you for admitting to what or where you went wrong or did wrong. I thank you for always being there. But I also had to say thank her too, because after seeing that I have made errors, after seeing that I've made mistakes, after seeing that I was not the perfect mom, after seeing that I could have just done better, but just didn't know how to at a point until I figured how to be better, I thank her for loving me just the same as I am her mom, for not judging me, for not condemning me as her mom, and for also not, looking at me as a woman who just did not have the wherewithal to, or maybe more so certain tools to love her the way I could in the earlier days, and to not use my early pregnancy as something to judge me by. And so I appreciate my older daughter so much too for that. So I want to say to you also, my Woman of Worth community mothers, Let your children know how much you appreciate them too. Let them know that sometimes when they say to you, Mom, I love you, Mom, I appreciate you, Mom, when they come to you for advice, when they let them know that you appreciate those things, because it says that it speaks volume. It is saying that you trust them for trusting you with their decisions or with their life. And so I want to thank you today for tuning in. For those who may have missed the early part of the stream, you can always go back and listen or watch on the replay. And I hope that there will be some nugget there for you to take away to improve the relationship with your child or with your children. And know that you are loved, you are blessed, you are highly favored. Your children are blessed, they too are highly favored. Your children are a blessing and they are an inheritance from God. That is what the word of God says. So your children should also or will fight in the gates for you. You should shoot them out like an arrow, is what the good word of God says. So today, may I implore you to love them, nurture them, forgive yourselves, forgive yourselves, but do what is needed to do to make the relationship better with your children, so you can be a proud mama like myself to declare that God has been good to us and has been in our midst and improving and making our relationship the best relationship that we could ever have, but also one of the best relationship between parent and child or mother and daughter. And I am extremely happy to share my stories, to inspire someone, to encourage someone, but also hoping that it will help to transform your life and cause you to walk in healing and value and victory. I love you, but God loves you more. Shalom. Bye-bye.